This is John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, we're doing another one of our reloading series. So far in this series, we've talked about prepping your brass, we've talked about how to select your bullet and powder. What we're going to talk about today is seating depth for your bullet. Now, this may seem counterintuitive to talk about seating depth before we talk about charge weights. However, what I like to do is figure out what my target seating depth is going to be for the charge workup before we actually start charging cases. And the reason being, I don't like to have cases sitting on the counter that have powder in them and don't have a bullet seated on top of them. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. All it takes is a slight bump and you dump powder over, or you dump powder from one case to another case, and it's just not a good situation to be into. So when I'm doing my loading, I like to seat a bullet in the case immediately after I charge it. So before we go to seating the bullet, we're going to want to check some information out about the rifle that we're using. Now, the rifle I have sitting in front of me here, you guys may recognize. This is the Budget Precision build. This is a Remington 700 SPS AAC SD. It's a 1 in 10 twist, it's chambered in 308, and it's your basic Remington 700. Now, I'll save some of you guys a lot of time in watching this. If you have a factory Remington and you intend to load it to feed from the magazine, all you need to know is seat your bullets to 2.80 cartridge overall length, and you'll be good to go. There's no need to go through this process because factory Remingtons have very long throats in them. That means you can seat the bullet well beyond magazine dimensions and it still won't contact the lands in the barrel. Now, the reason that we are going through the seating depth procedure is in a tactical rifle, if we're loading ammunition for a tactical rifle match, we do not want that bullet jammed into the lands when we close the bolt. The reason is that if we actually start engraving the bullet, if we jam the bullet into the lands when we close the bolt, first of all, we're producing a high pressure condition. The bullet jammed into the lands is the absolute highest pressure that we can get of any of the seating situations of the bullet. And the easiest way to think about it is imagine you've got a glass table. You can take a 50-pound dumbbell and set it lightly in the middle of a glass table, and it's going to sit there. If you take that same 50-pound dumbbell, raise it up 2 inches, and then drop it, it's probably going to go right through your glass tabletop. When the bullet starts moving, it's going to be easier for that bullet to then engrave itself into the lands and grooves with the momentum that it's carrying than it is if it's already starting jammed into those lands and grooves. If it's starting there, it's corking the barrel pretty good, and it's going to take a lot of pressure before the bullet can be pushed through the barrel. So, if you're doing a load workup and you're going to do a bench rest gun and you're absolutely looking for that last tenth of accuracy, start your load workup with your bullet jammed. Then, as you tune the bullet seating depth for accuracy, you'll back the bullet off the lands. Since we're talking about tactical rifle reloading, we don't want the bullet jammed. The bullet jammed in a tactical rifle means when you go to unload that cartridge at the end of the stage, you may end up pulling the bullet out of the end of the cartridge. If this is at a match, this is a very bad thing because you're going to end up with a bullet stuck in your barrel. You're going to end up with powder dumped in your action, and it's just going to be a big mess. You're going to have to go grab a rod to knock that bullet out of the lands. You're going to have to clean out your action to get all that powder out of there because it could bind up the action and cause other problems. So we don't want to run with the bullets jammed. Now, it's very unlikely to do that with a factory Remington, but we're going to check it anyway. There are all kinds of tools out there made by Hornady and several other manufacturers to do this job, but we're going to show you how to do it the low buck, no buck way. Now, what I have here, the main tool that we're going to use for this is just a wooden dowel rod. If you're really strapped for cash, you don't even need a dowel rod. You can just use a cleaning rod. I prefer a wooden dowel rod because there's no way I'm going to cause damage to steel bore with a softwood dowel. They're very cheap. I'm using a 30 caliber rifle here, and this is a 1/4 inch wooden dowel, so it fits easily down the bore. It has a nice flat tip on it to be able to push against the tip of that bullet when we get into this process. And it's cheap. It's much cheaper than a cleaning rod, so if for some reason I damage it or tear it up, I can just throw it away and I'm not out anything. You'll need a set of dial calipers or digital calipers, but something to measure exactly. We're going to need a rubber band, and you're going to need a bullet and a sized case. Now, the bullet needs to be from the lot that you're getting ready to load. It can't be, if you're loading 175 Sierra Match Kings, you can't use a 168 grain or 147 grain bullet to do this. It needs to be the exact same bullet and preferably the same lot. You can sometimes get away with lot to lot, but I would prefer to do this with the same lot for this one time. The cartridge needs to either be, or the case needs to be a new case or it needs to be a sized case because that neck needs to be tight enough to hold the bullet. Now at this point you're going to go ahead and set up your bullet seating die. Per your manufacturer's instructions, there are a lot of different seating dies out there and there are several different ways to set them up. So depending on what die you have, follow the instructions that came with it on how to put it in your press. With Lee dies, the new Lee bullet seating dies, you're pretty much going to screw it down until the die hits the shell holder with the ram in the fully up position. Then you're going to back the ram off, screw it in a little bit more, lock it down, and then I suggest that you back the bullet seater off as far as you can go. Now you're going to take your case, you're going to drop it in the case holder. You're going to set your bullet on there, and all you're going to do is start the bullet in the case. You want the bullet seated out as long as you can possibly seat it for this process. The only thing the case is doing right now is going to hold the bullet in the chamber for you while we do our measuring. Now once you've got your bullet set up like this, and I also want to mention, you want to make sure it's not a primed case. You don't want any chance of setting this thing off in the bore and jamming that bullet in there, or just simply getting this mixed up with a live case. So keep it unprimed. You're never going to fire this case, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Take your case with your long seated bullet, and we're just going to simply drop it on the cartridge follower in the magazine. We're going to slide the bolt forward very gently until it stops. Now when the bolt stops, we're going to take our rubber band, we're going to hook it around the bolt handle, and then we're going to hook it around the scope turrets. The only thing that rubber band is doing is holding forward pressure against the bolt in order to keep the cartridge in the chamber. Take our wooden dowel rod, start it in the barrel, and we're going to very gently slide it down the barrel until it contacts the nose of that bullet. Now I like to take my thumbnail, mark where that rod is in relation to the muzzle, bring it out just a little bit, and take a piece of blue painter's tape. And we're going to center that blue painter's tape on where my thumbnail was at and wrap it around the rod. Now you want to make sure that you're not putting so much painter's tape on there that the rod will not fit back into the bore. So we just want a wrap or two on there because we want to protect the rod for the next step and give us a nice place to put a groove. Now I'm going to take my knife, in this case Benchmade Adamas, and I'm going to set the blade against the muzzle. And you want to get the blade as flat against the muzzle as you can get, and then push in, and we're just going to turn the rod for one complete revolution. Now you can do this with a razor blade. It's actually probably a little bit more exact to do it with a razor blade, but we're not trying to slice all the way through that tape. We just want to put a nice V groove in the tape. Now, as I said, you can do this with a cleaning rod if you want. Make sure it's a coated cleaning rod, and be very careful that you don't cut through the tape and cut into your cleaning rod and damage the cleaning rod. This is why I prefer wooden dowel. There's no chance of that happening. If I do cut through the tape, it's not going to destroy the dowel. Now we've got our first mark there. We're just going to pull the rod out a little bit. We're going to take our rubber band off, pull the bolt back. Now our cartridge should push very easily. You saw how easy it was for me to push that rod back out of the chamber. If it's stuck in there, then you allowed too much pressure and you started to engrave the bullet in the lands and grooves, and that's not going to give you a good measurement. So you'll want to take the tape off and do it again. It should just barely take any pressure to push that cartridge back out. We're not trying to chamber this. We're just trying to allow the bolt to hold the cartridge in. Now, bring your rod back a little bit. Go ahead and close your bolt and lock it down. We'll slide our rod all the way back in until it stops against the bolt face. Just like before, mark it with your thumbnail. Bring it out just a little bit. Place a piece of tape around the rod. Slide it back in. Same process as before. Take the blade flat against the crown and just make one turn. Now when we bring it out, we see we've got two marks here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our dial caliper and we are going to measure between the two marks. And on this rifle, we are getting 2.945. I'm going to measure on the opposite side just to make sure that I'm not getting any slippage, and it is the same measurement. So the cartridge overall length, if we wanted the bullet to just kiss the lands, is 2.945. So we're going to grab a card and we're going to write that measurement down, and we're going to keep that measurement for any time that we're using 175 grain Sierra Match Kings. We know that if we wanted to kiss the lands, that's what we use. Now, for tactical rifle shooters, what this means is everything you load for this rifle with that bullet is going to be shorter than that measurement. It's really not that big of a deal, because if we take our Remington internal box magazine and we measure the inside of the magazine, that comes to 2.85. So 2.85 is the longest you can load and be able to fit in the internal magazine of a Remington. We take an AICS magazine with the front plate in place, then the longest we can load in the AICS magazine is going to be just a hair over 2.9. So you can see on either of those, we're not going to be able to load this bullet far enough out to touch the lands and hit the forward edge of the magazines and still be able to clear the forward edge of the magazines. I don't find any reason in these rifles to load these out far. Load them to 2.80 like the book says. If you measure federal ammunition is generally, for .308, is generally pretty close to 2.8. I've been measuring the Black Hills 175 grain match, and that's just a little bit below 2.8. So factories putting it about there as well. The key point on this is, with tactical rifles, we're not looking for razor's edge accuracy. We are looking for ultimate reliability. The rifle has to be reliable enough to finish the match. If it's not reliable enough to finish the match, then we're not going to win. It does us absolutely no good to take an unreliable rifle to a rifle match. Now, next week, what we're going to go through is we're going to go through how to seat this and turn this into a dummy round that you're going to keep for this rifle setup. And then we're also going to talk about how to select your powder charge and how to set up your ladder test. I know this has been a little bit of a short episode, but we're also getting a late start on this. I know you guys have seen, it's the end of Monday and we don't have this episode published yet. But we're trying to catch up. We shot a match Sunday, so we're a little bit behind. I've also been working real hard to get some other stuff out. For you guys that have not seen the Stalker Gen 2 video, please click on over and check that out. We put a lot of work into it. We are going to do some work here on the Budget Precision project as soon as we get done with this video. I've been promising it for a while. It's sitting here. It's ready to go. Have the parts, and we're going to get to working on it. As always, if you like the show, please click that thumbs up button. If you're a subscriber, thank you for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, click that subscription button. Doesn't cost you anything, and YouTube will let you know when new videos come out. One of you guys was commenting that you don't get the email notifications right away when the video comes out, that it may be 3 to 4 days. I am not entirely sure how YouTube goes about doing their video notifications, but if you just check, if you log into YouTube and then check the main page, it should show you right up at the top what videos are coming out, or you can always click over to our YouTube channel and the next video will be the first up on the channel. We're trying to get these out on every Monday and get them out right as soon as it's Monday morning. I know some of you guys have looked, and the last couple of videos we've got out right first thing Monday morning. This one we've fallen behind a little bit, so I apologize on that, but we're going to try to get back on track. So, until next week, get out and shoot!